Why strength? Out of all the things out there to train for, my obvious obsession is strength training. It's what I live for. It is what I do every day. It's what I coach. It's what I teach on YouTube. My entire livelihood revolves around strength training. Therefore, it is my life. It is my obsession. And a lot of people would say, why? I don't get it. I don't understand. Why not conditioning? Why not cardio? Why not appearance? Why don't you just train just to look good? Why don't you do these other things instead? And I want to make a case for this. And I think people need to understand that everyone has their own viewpoints. They have their different reasons for why they do the things they do. And I think what a lot of people need to understand is that strength is all-encompassing. And a lot of the goals that people think they have, training for strength will give them all the benefits of strength training and still oftentimes get them to the end result or the reason they wanted to train for these other things. And I'm not saying training for these other things is bad. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying that you're a silly person for doing it or any such thing. I want to make that clear. A lot of people might think that I'm ridiculous for my options and with the reasons I train and my motivation, and that's okay. You're entitled to that view. But I think that I've reached a point in my own life where I can be mature enough to say someone can disagree with me and they can train for another purpose, and that's okay. Right? There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. Let's talk about strength training, though. First of all, it's objective. Right? Training for strength is objective. It's quantifiable. It's well understood. Okay, there's no subjectivity to strength. Either you are strong enough to lift a weight or you are not. And people do need to remember, strength is measured in a 1 rep max. A lot of times people say, well, there's different types of strength, different ways to measure strength. No, actually there isn't. That's actually nonsense. That's not supported by the strength and conditioning world. That's not how exercise science researchers or anyone else measures these things. Okay, strength has a meaning, and it's the ability to produce force against an external object. Now, you might have individual leverages and bones and angles and everything involved in your body that might make the force you're producing internally different from your external. Right? Different limb lengths are going to affect that stuff. But the fact of the matter is, strength is the production of force against an external object, and that force can be measured. And to move a certain weight on a certain modality, whether it's 100 pounds, 500 pounds, 600 pounds, or 1,200 pounds, requires the exact same amount of external force. Okay? So it doesn't matter what your individual leverages and stuff are on the force production end. It's that you might need a different amount of muscle mass involved on your end, right? But the force itself is objective. We can measure it, we can quantify it. In other words, I can take you over to a deadlift bar or a bench press or an overhead press or a weighted pull-up, and either you can lift the amount of weight or you can't. Now, someone will say, well, if I've lifted 8 times, that's different. No, if you lifted 8 times, you produce the same force a guy did who lifted it once. Right, let that sink in. That's why your 8 rep max isn't relevant for strength measurement. Now, are you strong enough to lift more than that? Of course you are. If you can lift something 5 times or 8 times, you're obviously stronger than is required to lift that weight. But we still don't know what you can lift because we haven't measured it yet. We just know it's probably more than what you just did. But you haven't displayed any strength that's more than the guy who did it one time. Right? Pretty straightforward. We can measure strength objectively. Things like appearance are completely subjective. And also what people think of as if the aesthetic thing is largely genetic. In other words, your genes play a much, much bigger role than a lot of people seem to realize for that. Okay? Bone structure, muscle insertions. And it's not obtainable for everyone. A perfect example, someone like me who's lost 100 pounds of body fat, right? I got very sick, got very overweight, was stuck in bed for a year. I got very, 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 very fat. Okay? I'm going to have some loose skin. It may not ever be possible. A lot of you out there, due to your structure, may not ever have that beautiful aesthetic fitness model look. It just may not be in your genes, but everyone can get stronger. And let's come over to the point. Not everyone even likes that look. Also, that look is largely impacted by drugs as well. And you cannot deny that reality. The modern aesthetic look is largely based upon genetics and drugs. And that's the truth of the matter. But it's subjective. What you think looks good in that culture, someone else might find hideous. See the problem there? It's largely irrelevant. And I'm not saying you shouldn't care about your appearance at all. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with saying, hey, I do want to look better. Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. If it builds your confidence and it helps you attract a better partner, I don't think that's a bad thing. Because looks do matter. When you're talking about, mate selection, it matters. It absolutely matters. Of course it does. But you need to remember that it's subjective. And what you're going to find, sorry guys, but there's certain looks that a lot of you in the fitness world have convinced yourself looks great that a lot of women, and really attractive 10 out of 10 women, don't like. So there's no guarantee that you're going to get what you want. A lot of people might not even like it. So you just wasted all that effort if that was your goal. Because it's subjective and it's fleeting. And a lot of times you guys are pursuing body fat levels that you can't even sustain long term. So you can't keep it. People say, well, you can't sustain strength long term. Guys, I'm 43 and I deadlift over 600 pounds. Trying to get to 650. Possibly 700. Okay? What do you mean you can't keep it long term? Of course you can. I'm still getting stronger in my 40s. Keep strength. And here's the other thing. Let's come over and let's look at the health end. Most of the causes of death that are age-related have to do with sarcopenia. That's the loss of muscle mass and the loss of strength over time. The stronger you get and maintain it, do you understand that you're going to live longer and be healthier? Every metric of health and longevity is there. And a lot of guys will say, well, yeah, you might be strong now, but your deadlift's only going to be 500 pounds when you get to this age. Yeah, because we see that all the time. Sure, we see those guys who got really strong, and now they can only deadlift 500 pounds in their 60s and 70s. We know a bunch of those guys out there, right? But the fact of the matter is they can still deadlift 500 pounds at an elderly, frail age. Okay, because they got really strong, they were able to maintain a baseline strength that would be a normal, not exceptional strength for a healthy young man, because a 500 deadlift is not particularly impressive. But because they got impressive when they were younger, they're able to maintain a good, solid strength base in their 70s and 60s. And if you can still deadlift 500 pounds in your 60s or 70s, you're probably doing pretty damn good. So let's talk about the other stuff. What about all the other things? Well, the health factors, when we look at all the data, strength training beats conditioning for health if you only pick one or the other. Now, I do conditioning work and stuff, obviously. I do some GPP and metabolic conditioning and things because it's beneficial towards my goals, right? We want to be in shape meaning conditioning, not what bodybuilders call in shape. Bodybuilding's not healthy. So yeah, we want to do some conditioning and stuff. That's a good thing. But if you only measure them, even heart health, the latest meta-analysis says that strength training helps heart health more than cardio does, just slightly. Now, in a perfect world, you strength train and do some conditioning because they're not mutually exclusive in their benefits. Okay, so if you really, really wanted to be healthy, you would strength train primary and then do endurance and stuff as a secondary, right? You would get the best of both worlds. All the other health markers, strength training destroys everything else, particularly things like leg and grip. If you look at all the metrics of health and longevity, and I'm talking everything from cancer rate, Alzheimer's, everything, all these things that ravage us with time. And you might be saying at 18 you don't care about that, but in 10 years, 15 years, you're going to start caring about this stuff. You're going to care about it a lot. Okay? What Metrics of performance are always correlated. It's always either lower body strength, leg strength, or grip strength. Well, that's strength training, guys. Okay, that's not just doing curls. That's not doing curls in the squat rack. That's having a strong leg, strong grip, being able to squat and deadlift and all these other things. I'm not saying you can't work on your biceps. I'm not saying you can't do some curls. I'm not saying you can't have nice pecs. Nice abs. I'm not saying you can't have those things. I'm just saying that other stuff matters more for overall health. That you should probably train everything. You need to be strong. You need strong hips, strong glutes, strong legs. That's the stuff that keeps you healthy and injury-free for life. Okay. Training for strength as a primary goal has the best chance of the highest quality of life. It builds confidence. Okay, because a lot of these other things don't build the same level of confidence because they're too subjective. They make you too judgmental of yourself. Strength training builds confidence. It's objective. It has the best overall health benefits. That's why it needs to be a primary training goal. And I'm not saying you can't train for other stuff. I'm not saying it's bad to care about other stuff. I mean, if you want to do a lot of conditioning and endurance, or you care a lot about your bicep peaks or your diamond sharp abdominals, by all means, put some effort into that. I'm not telling you not to. Okay, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with any of that. You're being fit, you're being active, doing something positive. What I'm saying is that it would behoove you and be in your best interest to make strength the primary focus of your training, even if you care about these other things. Alright guys, so that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.